Hello, everyone. We'll get started in just a moment. Want to ensure that people get their audio preferences settled before we begin. Looks like a pretty good critical mass, and I'll make sure that I type this out afterwards, just so people joining a little bit later have all the same information. But hello and welcome to the first Edge user group of 2022. Took a hiatus in December for the holiday break, so glad you could all join us for this one. Before we get started, in case you haven't joined us for one of these before, we use Zoom Webinar as a platform, which is obviously very similar to Zoom meeting, but the big difference is that your cameras and microphones are disabled by default. So if you want to interact with the panel or with each other, the two main ways of doing so are using the chat function and the Q&A function. For chat, it will default to hosts and panelists, so we'll be able to see it, but no one else will. So if you want to send a message to everybody, just make sure that you select everyone from the drop down there. And then Q&A is where we prefer you put your questions for the panel, just because it's easier for us to manage. You can put those in at any time. Those are, you can make them anonymous if you want to, but people can view and upvote existing questions there, and it makes it easier for us to manage that when we get to the Q&A portion. So without further ado, I want to hand it off to Julia Finati.
Hi, everyone. It's been a while since we've all come together. So let me start by wishing you all a happy new year. Here's hoping that 2022 brings us a year of health and all good things and the end of this pandemic. Welcome to the January Edge user group, where you'll get updates to what's been happening in Edge and what to expect in the near future. After you hear from us, you'll have an opportunity to ask your questions of some members of the council on how to best use the resources within Edge itself when evaluating international credentials. We have several IESC and ACRO staff here today, so let's get started. And to do that, just now, I will turn it over to Jasmine. Jasmine.
Thank you, Julia. Hi, everybody. Welcome back to the Edge user group and to our new listeners and viewers. Welcome. You're in for a good time with all the updates we'll be sharing with you. My name is Jasmine Saidi Keenert. I am currently the chair of the International Education Standards Council. And I'm joined today by a few members of our council: Nancy Katz from Evaluation Service, Emily Tse with International Education Research Foundation, and Robert Watkins with University of Texas at Austin. Just a quick overview of who is this council, what does it do? So the ISC is composed of representatives from public and private institutions of higher ed, as well as a number of credential evaluation services. We are all volunteers, those of us serving on the council, including our fellows, which are individuals that are selected annually to serve on the council as research fellows. We're all volunteers. What you see in the Edge country profiles and the credential advice is information that has been collected and researched and then presented to the council. And we do this on a regular basis where we review the information and research and even questions presented to us by Edge users. And we then reach consensus, and it has to be a majority consensus as to the decisions that are reached. And that's what is reflected then on the credential advice. So the credential advice and grading scales are based on the research collected and new recommendations that are developed and approved by this group who serves on the IASC. So we look forward to your questions. We're tackling a number of them that were presented to Edge over the course of last year. And as we go through them, we post the updates on Edge and we share them with you here today. So I will now pass on the mic to Drew to conduct the poll. Thank you.
Thanks, Jasmine. So as she mentioned, welcome to 2022. And this is going to be the first poll that we are asking of you, the Edge user group. So we just want to know, everyone that's here, are you an Edge subscriber? Is this the first time you've joined us today? And what segment do you represent? Are you part of an institutional staff, an evaluation service, a government agency, or at a law firm? Well, whatever the case, we'll look and see who's with us today while we talk about some things that have been going on in the Bahamas. We've got updates on the Master of Science in India. You may need a little bit more information in Tunisia or Djibouti. We've got some updates there, as well as in Burundi, the Certificat des Humanités Générales is also something that we're going to touch on. We've got some updates that are coming in about how we're processing all of your questions that you submit to us and what we need from you to make sure that we can really answer those questions. Getting a little bit of that research done on your side allows our team to really work on that really well. And we've got a couple of other webinars that we'll tell you about. Fraud Busters is coming up here early February, and the International Institute, that's something that we've got here right in the middle of February. If you're looking for an online opportunity for some additional training, that's something that you're going to want to pay attention to. Well, it looks like everyone here, with the exception of maybe one of you, is already an Edge subscriber. Some of you have joined us before, but most of you have not. And most of you are here from an institutional staff. We've got a couple of representatives from government agencies, from evaluation services as well. So welcome to everyone. Thank you all for coming. And I guess without any further ado, let's head down to the Bahamas, and I'm going to throw this right back over to Jasmine. Jasmine?
All right. Bahamas came to us via an Edge user who brought it to our attention that the College of the Bahamas is now the University of the Bahamas. So we have made this change in the country overview. This change happened, as you can see on your screen, on November 10th, 2016 by Act of Parliament, and the University of Bahamas has now received this charter. It does offer associate and bachelor degrees and some graduate degree programs leading to masters. They are currently developing additional postgraduate degree programs that are research-based that will lead to other masters as well as PhDs, but those are in development. But currently what you will see are associate and bachelor and some master degrees. I think the masters are in business and education, but we will provide you with a complete list of these degrees on the country overview, and you can also visit the University of Bahamas website. So this is a fresh new update to the AcroEdge Bahamas. Thank you.
Next slide, please. Hi, this is Nancy. I'm talking to you from a very cold Chicago. And we're going to go off to a very warm India. India is always fun. We love having questions about India because there are always so many different degrees and configurations of degrees that it gives us a puzzle to solve. We had a question about the Master of Science degree, MS, and we decided to tackle a few of the other Master of Science degree programs. They all have different alphabets per se. One is an MS, one is an MSc, some are honors degrees. And so we revised the a little bit of the wording for the master's degrees within India. What you'll see, a new revision, is there's the Master of Science, an honors degree, MSc parentheses honors. This is generally an integrated 4-year program where the entrance to this program is standard 12, aka completion of high school in India. Please don't confuse this with the Master of Science that is a 2-year program or a 1.5-year program. This is the Master of Science Honors is an integrated 4-year program. You then also have a Master of Science in parentheses MS. This is generally a minimum of 3 semesters of study. Entrance to this program is a Bachelor of Engineering or a Bachelor of Technology or a 3-year Bachelor of Science plus a 2-year Master of Science. but you have to have a minimum of a 4-year degree program to enter a Master of Science parentheses MS. That's what's really important. Then you have the Master of Science MSc that is in the 3+2 pattern in India. The 3+2 pattern is the 3-year bachelor's degree followed by a 2-year master's degree for a total of 5 years of study. Somehow we've gotten booted out of the slide, but it's all on there for your enjoyment and pleasure.
I was trying to edit, sorry about that.
That's okay. When working with qualifications from India, the most important thing is to find out the entrance requirement to the program and then the length of the program. The entrance requirement, or as I used to call it when I was in admissions, the admission ticket to the degree program, whether it's a bachelor's, a master's, a master of philosophy, etc. Find out what the admission requirement is, and that will help you put the puzzle together as to how many years of study you have, and is it equivalent to a bachelor's only, a master's degree, or something additional. Next.
Hello, that would be me, Robert Watkins, UT Austin. Hello from a cold, not as cold as Chicago, but a cold Austin, where 34 degrees is not what Austinites are usually accustomed to. So it's great to hang out in warm places like Tunisia and Djibouti, which is what I will be talking about in the next few minutes. First up, we have Tunisia. What happened here is that we heard from an individual, actually not an EDGE user, but someone who actually has the pharmacy degree, but more recently, and informed us that EDGE was wrong, that in fact it was no longer a 5-year Diploma National in Pharmacie, which is the formal title of it, but rather a 6-year one that included the title of doctor in it. So I began to do some research, and basically our information on this credential stemmed from a marvelous book by Meg Winger of ECE, in the book that she authored from ECE called ECE Presents, a book on the educational system of Tunisia. And she very nicely explains that diploma of National Diploma of Pharmacy. And so this was 2002. EDGE rolled out in probably 2004, 2005. So we availed ourselves of that information and a couple of other sources and let it just sit for the next 15 years until we were told by someone who actually held a more recent pharmacy degree that we needed to update it. And as it turns out, there was an Educational Reform Act in 2008, which did in fact change this first professional credential in pharmacy to 6 years and renamed it the Diplôme National des Docteurs in Pharmacie. Now, what it appears that they did is that they took that first 5-year national diploma and the subsequent 1-year internship, which led to a specialist diploma, Diplôme de Pharmacie Spécialiste, and jammed them together and added a thesis requirement. Undoubtedly, it was the addition of this thesis that prompted the educators at the time to insert the term doctor into the title. Now, that that's easy enough. Just add this new information. And by the way, folks, this is not yet in EDGE Tunisia. It will be soon, but it's not there yet. So if you happen to be in EDGE now, while you're watching and listening to this, you won't see those changes, but they will be there soon. But it appears that while they're calling it a doctor, the council was pretty unanimous in deciding that we still considered this the first professional degree in pharmacy, because it is the entry-level qualification. Same thing that Nancy was talking about a moment ago, how important that is. The entry qualification is baccalaureate. And so just because it's 6 years and has a thesis component, it still enables one to practice pharmacy in country. Therefore, we consider it a first professional degree in pharmacy and not a PhD. Mike, if we could move on then to Djibouti. Thank you. This was a little simpler. An edge user from one of our colleagues in Canada, in Quebec, in fact, wrote in to say, did you know that the primary education system in Djibouti is now 5 years, not 6, like you say in EDGE, which means, of course, we've got to change it. But as you know, we need to keep the old entry because undoubtedly some of you are going to get credentials from an earlier time period. So we needed to keep it. We just simply needed to update it. What basically what happened was, first of all, we had to research it. We took his, while we're happy to get his input, this fellow from Quebec, we did need to verify that this was the case. And sure enough, in 2000, they changed the educational system from 6 years beginning at the age of 6 to 5 years beginning at the age of 6. The credential, however, did not change. The credential awarded, it's still the Certificat d'Aptitude de Base, CFEB, sorry. And so what we had to do, Mike, if you could go to the next slide, was bifurcate our credential advice to you, because you're still going to see some that are older. So you still want to do what we originally said, place them in grade 7. But now, if you get the newer credential, you'll want to take that individual, you'll think in terms of placing that individual in grade 6. So that was a fairly simple change to Djibouti, but now we're updated. And by the way, that is in EDGE Djibouti right now. And with that, Jasmine, I'll turn it back to you.
Thank you, Robert. I think now we will invite Emily to share with us her research on Burundi.
All right, so hello everyone. The last set of credentials will be hailing from Burundi, specifically the secondary education system, as there have been a number of changes in the last several years. The EDGE updates actually started back in 2020 when an EDGE user alerted us to the fact that it changed from a 13-year system to a 12-year system. So we made a number of changes, but unfortunately not all of those updates got posted. So late last year, another user brought that to our attention because those updates were cross-referenced, but the actual revisions, some of the revisions were not showing up in the credentials section. So we reinstated those updates, but as we were doing that, we were doing some double checking, and then lo and behold, found that there was yet another change and yet another credential. So that new credential is in the works, and it's not yet an EDGE, but we'll be up there shortly. But that just goes to show how helpful our EDGE users are, and that educational systems are works in progress, and so is EDGE. So the first credential we present to you is the Diploma of General Humanities. So previously, as mentioned, Burundi was a 13-year elementary and secondary educational system. So at the end, the students would get the Diploma of General Humanities. But that then changed in 2016. On to the next slide. And then again, it changed to 12 years instead, culminating in the Certificate of General Humanities. So after 2016, instead of the Diploma of General Humanities, we get the Certificate of General Humanities. A little tricky, but manageable. But then there was another pivot and restructure where elementary and lower secondary education were combined to be referred to as Onsonimo Fondamental, which means fundamental education. Onsonimo means education. So with that, also onto the next slide, we have upper secondary education being referred to as Onsonimo Post-Fundamental or Post-Fundamental Education. So in 2019, then there was another pivot, and they began awarding the certificate of the end of general post-fundamental studies. So now we're doing away not only with the Diploma of General Humanities and the Certificate of General Humanities, we now have the Certificate of General Post-Fundamental, the end of, sorry, General Post-Fundamental Studies. So this is the one that has yet to be added to EDGE and is in the works, but we have it now all on everyone's radar. But, and of course there's another but, on to the next slide. What's important actually is, at the end of the day, the Diploma d'État, which is the state diploma. So all those three credentials that we learned about do mark the end of the secondary education cycle, but there's also another credential involved, the state diploma, because then what happens is students would take the state examinations and upon passing them would receive the state diploma, which is needed for full access to higher education, especially university. If you receive one of the three previous credentials that we spoke about, again, the certificate or diploma of general humanities, or the certificate of the end of general post-fundamental studies, that would only give you restricted access and very restricted access. For example, perhaps teacher training institutes and the like. But if you want full access to higher ed, especially university, you really need the Diploma d'État or the state diploma. And this is the credential that we look for and which we regard to the completion of senior high school graduation. So the takeaway for Burundi is that there was a change from 13 years to 12 years, but we still need the Diploma d'État or state diploma for senior high school graduation. And that's it for Burundi.
Can we just pause here and answer one question because it's directly related to Burundi? Emily, maybe you could help with the question here. It says, for Burundi, do you generally recommend using only the state exams for GPA calculation or including all internal high school grades?
So I can speak from the perspective of a credentials evaluation agency, and because the credential that matters at the end is a state diploma, so we just look at that, and that's what we calculate the GPA and grades from. But I know there are universities that may look for 3 or 4 years of certain subjects and need a fuller profile, so they might also include what I regard as internal subjects and grade results. But for us, the main credential is a state diploma, so that's what we would use. And again, it would really be up to your institution. I'm not sure if there are participants from other universities who would like to share how they deal with that. But again, for us, it's the state diploma.
Thank you, Emily.
Well, up on the next slide here after Burundi, we've got some ideas. One of the things that Emily had mentioned in there was that it's really helpful that all of the EDGE subscribers are really helpful in letting us know about things that we should provide a little bit more information on, that we need to do a little bit more research on, that would just really further the information that's out there for everyone. And one of the things that you can do is you can help send that information to us. But what we're going to need, it's got to be redacted. It's got to come in a way that's going to protect individual student privacy. We can't review it if there's any information in there that would let someone know anything that should remain private about that individual. We want to be sure that we can see both sides, color copies of the document. Sometimes there's an important seal on the reverse side that you might not even notice here at the beginning, but would really be helpful for verifying authenticity and to just understand where the credential was issued as well. How did you do your research? What information did you use to come to this conclusion that said this piece in EDGE needs to be updated? And so just please provide us with that research. What you're getting with EDGE is you're getting representatives from highly selective, moderately selective, from credential agencies across the entire country that have decades of experience with all of this. And we're still going to sit down in a room virtually, chat about this, figure out what the correct answer is and how best to understand it. And then we're going to give you that. All of that experience is going to be, condensed down into a recommendation, into a piece of information, into something on Edge that you can actually use. But you're going to get that vetting, but we need you to do that research there at the front end. Also, as Emily and Robert and Nancy talked about, what does it take to get into this program? What does it take to get in? How long does the program take? And what can you do with it once you're done? So with all of that, those are just some things to consider when you're reaching out to us with your questions. We love to be a place where we can share more information, and we would love to do it with you as our research partners. So on to the next slide. We're going to be talking about some of those Acro Edge user updates that we're doing for you to try to make it easier for you to see all the information that we have. So on the next slide, we have some of the changes that we've been going through. We've been working with some of our partners, and we're adding in those attachments so that you can submit that information right at the exact same time when you're asking that question. It can all be kept together. That'll be really helpful for us. And there's kind of a division between, are you reaching out about something that needs to be updated within Edge because it's information, or is it something that we need to help you with so that you can access your subscription? Contact Edge there on the left side of your screen. That's where you're going to send us your questions about kind of the nuts and bolts of Edge. And there on the right, the submit and update, that's where you're going to want to send those questions where we need to make that change. But composing all that information and sending it complete, that'll help us to help you. But some other things that might help you are some of our webinars that we offer, some of our trainings that we offer. But to talk about this one, I'm going to hand this one, let's go to Jasmine. Jasmine, would you talk about the Guide to Bogus Institutions for us?
Thanks, Drew. Yes, I'd be happy to. And I want to just show you my copy. This is really a valuable resource for anyone engaged in credential evaluation, admissions, advising, recruiting. This is really important to have because unfortunately, the more digital we become, the more online programs we offer, the more demand for educational credentials, well, the more we will see institutions that do not have legitimate standing, and they're coined as diploma mills, and then with diploma mills have come accreditation mills that verify that these are accredited institutions, but they're not. And then unfortunately we will also have evaluation mills. So it's important for us to stay up to date and to have important tools at our hands so that we can determine the legitimacy of institutions and know more about the existence of these fraudulent institutions. So this is a great publication to purchase. It's still available. Contributors include several members of the IASC, Emily Say, my colleague, and myself, as well as past contributor who's no longer with ACRO, but she's pursuing other goals, Anne Koenig, whom we miss a lot. Other contributors are experts in the field, such as Alan Ezell, who's a retired FBI agent. We have John Baer, who is the author of several publications on diploma mills. We have George Golan, who's professor at, I think, University of Illinois, Urbana-Champaign. Then we have other authors are Alan Contreras, Alex Morawski, Alexander Popovsky, and we have Jessica Montgomery. So just a terrific publication shared by lots of wonderful contributors. So please put this on your book purchase list and have a copy. I've given a bunch of these to all of our evaluators, so everyone has a copy on their desk. Thank you.
And with that, I would like to take this opportunity to invite you to a very special event that we are hosting on ACRO. It's a free webinar, and it is going to be presented by the Allens, Alan Ezell and Alan Contreras, John Baer and George Golan. This is really an exciting time to hear these guys that are really sort of the pioneers and just talking about this and putting all this together on bogus institutions. They're going to cover things like handling fraud, advice for prevention, how these diploma mills operate, and some of the work that they've done and the things that they've seen. That's going to be held February 3rd at 2 o'clock. So please, there's a QR code up there. I believe you can get right in, and Mike has very kindly put it in the chat as well, the link to register for this. I think it will be an event that you won't want to miss. So please consider signing up. And other exciting news, I'm going to turn this over to my colleague, Dave Mahaly, who's going to tell you about our ACRO International Institute that's also coming up in February.
Thank you, Julia. Yes, ACRO International Institute, which used to be known as the Summer and Winter Institutes, will be held the week of February 14th to the 18th. It's the Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, and these are faculty-led sessions live from 1 to 4 Eastern Standard Time. As opposed to the self-paced learning options that are available from ACRO, these are live real-time sessions and faculty-led by some of the people in the IESC and others. And you can scan the QR code in the lower right-hand corner and find out more information and register. And that will do it for the International Institute.
Okay. This is the Gloria Nathanson Research Fund for International Education. Gloria Nathanson was the former chair of the IESC. And we have set up this fund for those of you who are interested in taking a deep dive and doing research on a particular education system or something related into international education. So this is a great opportunity if you wish to, enhance your research skills and share your findings with us. ACRO will pay. There is a compensation to defray any the costs for this research. So please take advantage of this wonderful opportunity. These are the types of projects that have been funded and will be funded, full country profiles, maybe a substantive country update, white papers on a subject of interest. So great opportunity. As you can see, ACRO makes a lot of avenues available for those of us in international education to explore and continue our professional development. Thank you.
And our next slide. So despite the freezing temperatures in Chicago and Austin and elsewhere, spring is coming. And with spring comes our annual meeting. We'd like to take this opportunity to invite you to our 107th annual meeting to be held in Portland, Oregon, which I am very excited for. It will be April 3rd to the 6th, an in-person event, and we do hope you'll come and have the opportunity to really hear some great sessions, good content, professional development and networking, and just seeing one another again. So we hope you come to that as well. Next slide. Let's move into the Q&A portion. Any questions that we have in the Q&A? I believe we have one. There's a question which is in regard to the absence of entries for four-year non-honors bachelor's degrees from certain Canadian provinces, at least Alberta at the top of this person's head, despite their prevalence. There's a general bachelor's, which says the general bachelor's is 3 years and acknowledges that these have been phased out since the 80s and are almost gone, but will there be an entry added for these types of 4 or more year non-honors degrees in the future? Who would like to take that?
Julia, I'll go ahead and take that.
Of course.
Historically, 3 versus 4 year degrees in Canada traditionally were largely found only in Quebec, where it's a routine after CEGEP, or Ontario, where there are general or sometimes called ordinary bachelor's degrees, and then 4 year honors degrees. And traditionally, that's the way it was approached. A 3 year degree was an ordinary or general degree, while a 4-year degree was always called honors. Evidently, the individual here has stumbled across one in Alberta that was 4 years, but not an honors degree. When you see that, sometimes that will tend to be engineering, for example. Engineering may or may not carry honors parenthetically along in the title, but is traditionally always a 4-year degree in most places where you go and find 3-year versus 4-year degrees. So anyway, we can certainly take that up next time, Jasmine, if you want to put it on there. I think it would be more likely to be something such as a minor insert in the 4-year honors entry that might say in an author's note that it's that there are 4-year degrees that are not designated honors, but then your credential advice would be the same, because the IESC approaches 4-year degrees as being essentially comparable. We don't need to get into quality, but certainly in terms of quantity they are. And so that would guide our credential advice in that regard. But I see what you mean. If it's not in there, there's going to be a tendency to wonder, well, you know, what's the deal? So we'll certainly have a look at that and see if there's a way we can interject that. That being said, we might have to give some thought to the other provinces as well, in terms of whether or not they have 4-year non-honors degrees, and how we should address that problem.
Yeah, consider it placed on the agenda. So.
And this is just one of those perfect examples that if anyone out there listening has examples of these credentials that you're asking about, this is the type of information that when you can submit it to us, that's really going to allow us to get that information into Edge quicker for you when you're able to do that research that you know how to do.
All right. We have one question here that I think will be, a lot of folks might want to have an answer or input on this, but simply, what is an evaluation mill?
Well, I'll jump in, and maybe my colleagues can also support my my answer. In doing our research on diploma mills, initially, you know, we used to have just diploma mills, which are institutions, or I'm using that term very loosely, is an entity claiming to be a university or school or high school that is offering degrees, but they have no recognition, they have no legitimacy. They may have a license to operate, but they're offering these degrees for a fee without any academic training. They don't have really professors. It's really a shell body that is selling degrees, bogus degrees. And for a while they would claim that accreditation is not important, accreditation is unnecessary, etc. But I think down the line they realized that accreditation is an important step. So diploma mills created accreditation mills, and typically it's done by the same body that has created a bogus institution. So as time goes on, they realize that, oh, they need to get some sort of recognition of the so-called degrees that they're issuing, and no one is recognizing them. So guess what? Now that they've created an accreditation mill, they've decided to set up an evaluation mill, which is, again, a shell organization that has no validity, no recognition, no affiliation with anybody. It's just the same sort of fraud rings that create these things. They also create an accreditation and evaluation mill. One of the biggest diploma mill generators is based in Karachi, Pakistan, and goes by the name Exact. And they are crunching diplomas and certificates and evaluations, whatever you want, under varieties of names. And their bogus credentials are really circulating around the world. I'm thinking hundreds and hundreds of thousands of these credentials are now in the hands of many people who've paid for this. And you'll learn more about this by attending the February webinar, where you'll have Alan, Azelle, and the others presenting in detail. So it's an evaluation, accreditation, diploma mill go hand in hand. I hope that helps answer the question.
That's excellent. And I don't know if anybody has anything else they want to add, but I think that pretty well covers it, that these entities now are sophisticated enough where they're trying to close the loop. So there's a whole
Exactly.
circle of this going on.
Mhm, mhm.
We do have a question about a WES evaluation that was received, and we really can't comment on other credential evaluation agencies' reports, but it states that the ND and the HND from Nigeria are considered in their report equivalent to a U.S. associate degree and U.S. bachelor's degree. Acro Edge for Nigerian credentials states the HND is not equivalent to a U.S. bachelor's degree. This person would like an explanation. I do think we addressed this in a fairly recent Edge user.
But I'll be glad to jump
Robert?
in again, Julia. Yeah, because I'm probably one of the most vocal on this issue and this topic. The way I look at it the HND is something that's seen in a lot of Anglophone countries. Of course, it originated as conceptually with the UK educational system, that in Britain. And in Britain, it's not considered degree comparable. And so as we look abroad where it might be replicated, we find the country probably the most prevalent use of it, although not exclusively by any means, is Nigeria, where you routinely see what used to be called ordinary national diploma, now generally called just national diploma, or ND, and then higher national diploma, HND. Let me kind of talk at it from two angles. First angle was a long time ago, before A-levels were done away with in West Africa and were superseded by the West African Senior School Certificate. What you usually found was that an individual would do the WASC after 11th grade, what might be considered O-level equivalents, and then go into a polytechnic which did not have degree granting powers or authority by the government, and do a ordinary national diploma and then a higher national diploma. These were 4 years after 11th grade, so that if you did it from a quantitative point of view or your counting point of view, the only quote unquote post-secondary education that you had was 3 years. 3 years after a 12th year, that would have been that first national diploma year. Well, in '88, the A-levels went away. And so you suddenly had a 2+2 situation where the national diploma was 2 years at a poly, and then 2 more years got a higher national diploma. And so this is what made it more controversial, is the sense that now, after clear conclusion of high school in Nigeria, you have a 4-year experience. Why is that not comparable to a U.S. bachelor's degree? And some actually began to say that it is. I know I did a presentation years and years ago with someone from ECE who said that their policy was that it was a bachelor's degree, and I was saying at UT it was not. Others have said as much, but then others have also backtracked from it as well. To me, the clincher is this. In Nigeria, you have a credential fully comparable to the US bachelor's degree, and it's called a bachelor's degree. It's distinct from an HND. A poly cannot award a bachelor's. It can only award an HND at the highest level, maybe an advanced diploma beyond that, but not a bachelor's degree. And when I talk to Nigerians about it, they will say clearly that industry looks to the bachelor's first, and then they'll hire the HND holder if they can. HND holders do not get unrestricted access into graduate programs at universities. They can get in with a certain high grade level, usually upper credit and beyond. But so there's some qualifications to their entry into a master's program, whereas the bachelor's holder generally gets in even if their GPA is not all that great. So to me, there's some distinctions and some differences. And so I firmly stand behind the EDGE credential advice of 4 years of study, or really, in the case of the HND, it's literally just 2 years of study, that it's at the undergraduate level, but it is not a bachelor's degree. Others might want to chime in.
Yeah, I also wanted to add to what Robert had to say. There has been literature out there that says that the Nigerian government encourages for H&D holders and bachelor's degree holders to be regarded as the same. But that is for employment purposes. The truth of the matter is that higher national diplomas are awarded at polytechnics, which are not degree granting institutions, meaning they don't grant bachelor's degrees and above. Most H&D holders are able to enter actually into the third year of a bachelor's degree. You might see some go straight into a master's degree, but those tend to be MBA programs. In most other instances, they do a top-up program instead for a bachelor's degree and enter into year 3 of the bachelor's degree. There has been talk about upgrading H&Ds to a Bachelor of Technology, but that has not happened yet. But that idea is to address the differences between an H&D and a bachelor's degree.
Okay, I do see that we have one more question. Actually, it's a two-part question. The question is anybody familiar with the transcript vendor docket.com.my in Malaysia? Someone from Docket reached out extending an invitation to our institution. I'm losing it now, missing the rest of the question. But I'm going to turn that over to Jasmine because I think she can address that.
Thank you. Well, actually, I did respond to one of our attendees who had a question about True Copy from India, and I'm familiar with them. We've tested them out. They are currently now also a partner with Parchment, and they serve a large number of academic institutions. So this is an entity that works with the universities in India in getting their documents digitally. So we work with them. I'm not familiar with Docket.
That was supposed to be Emily, sorry.
So go ahead, Emily.
So I just want to backtrack a little bit, particularly with the pandemic, it's sort of fast-tracked this whole electronic transcript scene. Of course, we have seen electronic transcripts, but much more so now with the pandemic. So we tend to see different platforms or modes of delivery. Of course, there's the plain email with the email attachment, where it's coming directly from the educational institution, or you might have a third-party vendor like Parchment or National Student Clearinghouse in the US who will issue the electronic records on behalf of the educational institution. But they are not a teaching institution themselves. They are strictly in the business of issuing electronic records. Then we have a third category, if you will, which we refer to as document procurement and verification services. For us as North Americans, we're not used to this concept, but they do exist in India and Malaysia, as we saw with True Copy and with mydocket.com. So what happens is these are third-party providers, but they don't have necessarily a formal relationship with the educational institution. What they do is they work with the student to try to provide a fast, efficient, and verifiable way of transmitting their academic records so that they don't have to handle the originals or the physical copies. So what happens is normally these third-party providers, again, document procurement verification services, what they do is when they receive the electronic records of the student, they will then contact the educational institution and verify them and authenticate them. Or the student might have the educational institution forward the third-party vendor their documents directly. So regardless, there's some sort of authentication process, and then that company will then serve as maybe an electronic wallet, if you will, and then to whoever the student wants, be it the employer, a higher education institution that they're applying to, or whatnot. That third-party service will forward the electronic documents and vouch for them. So it's making it fast, efficient, because it's done electronically, and also saying, look, these are legit. We contacted the school and we can vouch for these documents. So it's not something we see particularly in the US, so it's a bit odd to us, but that does exist in places like India. So that's with True Copy, as well as with worldwide transcripts in India, and then with mydocket.com in Malaysia. I haven't had personal experience with mydocket.com in Malaysia. I am aware of them though, and they are fairly young, so that's why they might not have a lot of institutions to show in their directory or whatnot, a list of providers that they work with. I think they started in 2020. But in terms of the model, this is not uncommon, and you will see it in some parts of the country.
Thank you, Emily. And I think that is a good point that we are starting to see a whole lot more of these digital document services. And so we need to research them and do our due diligence. And
I'm so sorry, Julie, I just remembered. I do want to point out to the participants here that TISEP does have a database. Presently, it's called Digital Document Hub. It's open to TISEP members, but it's a database where you can either click on the country or do a search for the country, and they'll tell you who the digital document providers are for that country. So it's not for an individual institution unless it's a examination board, but it'll tell you all the main ones. For example, Digitary for Australia, Canada, and whatnot. So that might be a useful resource to check out. Sorry.
Yeah, agree completely. Thank you. I appreciate you providing that. Okay, let's go on to our, I don't see that we have any other questions in our Q&A. So let's go on to our last couple of slides. Drew, would you like to talk about these?
Hey, thanks, Julia. So basically, one of the things that we want to impress upon all of you is that there are lots of ways that you can get information and ways to connect with colleagues here. So if you don't already have an Edge subscription, I know one of you out there doesn't, you can go ahead and you can get an Edge subscription so that you can access all this information. It's a great place when you're developing your institutional policies or how you're going to approach evaluations. It's great to have something that you can reference and you can understand where the research was coming from and how those thoughts were developed. You should join our international activities listserv. It's now called the International Activities Group. It's a Google group. For those of you that use Google within your offices, you'll have a little bit of additional functionality where you'll be able to go back and search through all of the archived questions, and you'll be able to see all of those responses that came through. And if you're not part of a Google network, you'll still be able to post your questions, and everyone on the listserv will be able to see those and respond to you. So this is a great place where you, when you just don't know who to ask, this is a great place to get started. These are colleagues that have probably done some of the same research, that have probably come across the same issues at some point in their careers. You just got to reach out and start. It's not a place to find a job or to post a job or to talk about other professional development opportunities. It's a great place for nuts and bolts questions on how to do something. And then if you're answering the question, teach them how to fish. Don't just give them the answer. Tell them how they're going to go about, and they're going to verify that this institution is recognized. You can go onto Edge and you can look at all of the resources, and we have links that'll send you to recognition bodies. But when you're answering those questions on the listserv, be sure that you're making sure that the person that you help will be able to help the next person down the line too. If you're not already a subscriber, Acro Connect is a free resource that's available for you. You don't have to be an Acro member. You don't have to be an Acro Edge subscriber. This is just more information about what Acro is doing and keeps you up to date on what the association is in the middle of. So we invite you to join the conversation. And on the next slide, we've got for everyone that comes to look at this recorded webinar, or everyone that references all of these slides, it might be easy just to go to the last one so you can get directly to the page that you need to get to. So with that, that's pretty much everything that I had. Anyone else of my panelists have anything they'd like to add here on this first Edge user group of 2022?
Welcome back, Drew. We're glad you're back.
We are glad you're back. There's a question here. I think, Emily, you could help me on this one. This is about what you just said. It's the TISEP site that provides electronic transmission for transcripts for each country.
Okay,
If you could give
so
the info, thank you.
yeah, sorry, it's a little bit tricky because number one, it's only available to TISEP members, but I think it's worthwhile in terms of what you get from TISEP membership. They did not pay me to say that. And the other part that's tricky is that the name of the resource is in flux right now, but it's basically a website of its own. It's a database. And right now, I believe it's called Digital Docs Hub. But I think what I should do is, gosh, how can we get this information out? But yeah, it's called Digital Docs Hub. And again, there's a map. You can click on the country, or you can just research the country, or you can research the provider itself in the search field. And it'll tell you who the known digital docs providers are in that region. But Mike, is there a way where I can email because I have to look it up. Well, let me see if I can look it up right now.
This is Nancy. The website is TISEP, T as in Tom, AI, C as in cat, EP as in professional.org. And then you can search it from there. Emily's got the rest of that.
That's great. Thank you, Nancy. Yes, my brain had a gap there. But yes, if you go to TISEP.org, TAICEP.org, and then if you go to the resources tab and go down, there's a best practices, electronic transcripts and verification portals. And then you have two choices: best practices overview, and then TISEP's digital document provider resource. So if you basically go to, once you get to the website, if you go to resources, and then you look at the menu, look for electronic transcripts and verification portals, that will take you there. But again, my understanding is that it's only available to TISEP members. So you might have to get that part sorted out first. But again, it's a great resource for this changing field and landscape.
Great, thank you, Emily. Well, with that, we're 3 minutes shy of the hour. So, and I see that Drew has been following up as needed in the chat. So I'd like to thank everybody for being here. And we hope you join us again next month, February, for our user group. Have a good week, everybody.
Thanks, y'all.
Thank you.